I'm Jessica Anne Pressler, and you've tuned into Your Traitor Within, a podcast that exposes the brutal truths of healing, self discovery, and breaking free from relentless patterns of self sabotage. Welcome to Your Traitor Within. Today's guest is Kristine Jensen, a licensed psychotherapist in California and a certified clinical trauma professional and social worker whose life's work centers on one of the most tender wounds we carry, childhood shame. Kristine has dedicated her career to empowering every individual to heal their bruised heart and embrace their innate dignity and worth. I love that, by the way. She's the author of Bruised, Not Broken: Healing the Shame of a Troubled Childhood, a title that says everything about the lens through which she sees her clients, not as damaged, but as resilient. I have a feeling this conversation is going to land in a very profound place for so many of you. And today, Kristine isn't just coming on as an expert, but she's going to share her Traitor Within story. Thank you for your courage, your openness, and your willingness to be vulnerable. Welcome, Kristine.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm very happy to be here.
I am so happy to have you here and so honored. And I have to just say, before we start on your story, how the concept of shame and the concept of seeing our childhood as being maybe out of some trauma hits home to me because I have spent most of my life denying my childhood as being important enough to consider it trauma or damaging because I didn't have the big T. I didn't have a big trauma happen. It was a feeling of not feeling safe. It was a feeling of walking on eggshells, dealing with narcissism, dealing with infidelity, dealing with adoption, dealing with,
Oh, well,
and dealing with uh, alcoholism and other drug use, but not, so it was a feeling of not feeling safe, but yet I didn't have to worry about money for college and grad school. I didn't have to worry, so I was very
yep.
privileged. So I never felt I could use that. Um, and even when writing my story, I worried about that because I felt guilty. There was a
Mm-hmm.
guilt that I would even say that there was trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that's now when helping other people, that's not how I feel. So it was a personal
Mm-hmm.
thing. When
Mm-hmm.
someone else came to me, I think every child deserves to feel safe. Every child
Yes.
deserves to feel love without condition.
Yes.
Every child, and not having that can be trauma,
Yes.
having to worry as a child to be the parentified child, for example, is
Mm-hmm.
traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, we will start talking about the traitor within. We learn to cope as a child to try to
Yes.
feel safe. Most of us have no choice as a child. This is what's been given to us. These are the parents or the guardians that,
Yes.
and they're given to us, and we have to make it work. But we can take those coping skills
Mm-hmm.
that worked as a child, or worked good enough, not great necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
into our adult life, into our relationships, into the way that we act in the world, and those things that kind of worked now are self-sabotaging. So that's
Yes.
what I'm traitor with. And so I definitely see a connection between our work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to start, if it's okay with you, to tell me your traitor within story, and then we can just take it from there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Not only do we have a professional connection, Jessica, but as I listen to you talk about your story,
Hmm.
there's some very common themes as well, as you can
Hmm.
probably imagine.
Hmm.
So I'll just start with how I really started identifying that, in fact, I did have trauma in my life, although, like you, uh, my growing up life was, I mean, it was troubled in a certain sense. I had a stepfather that came into my life when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and he was a difficult person.
Hmm.
And my mother had a number of children after she married him, and so she was overwhelmed. Um, but like you, I did not ever think, I would never call it trauma.
Hmm.
And part of that was, and I'm sure this is true for you too, Jessica, I listened to people who had trauma,
Hmm.
and I mean big trauma.
Hmm.
And and I was just amazed at their resiliency. I was amazed at how they managed their lives and coped. And so anytime some what I would call little thing came up in my mind about my own history, I would just go, oh God, Kristine, please. And so I was not prepared to discover the level of, and I even hesitate now to use the word trauma. But yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'd like to just tell you a little bit about sort of the discovery that I made about the theme of shame, because I don't know about you, because I graduated graduate school earlier than you, although we've both been in practice for ages. Yes. We don't even want to say how long. At least I have gray hair to show for it.
Oh, Jessica. I have gray hair. I just dye it.
Oh, I see. I got tired of that.
Yeah.
So let me just say that I had moved from Sacramento, California, over to the coast. And I was anticipating, and I'd closed my practice of 30 something years. And I was anticipating having kind of an easy breezy oceanside retirement. And what happened instead was that once my professional self kind of took a back seat, or actually was not even useful anymore because I wasn't practicing, here came my personal self. And oh my goodness, she was so much less formed, so much less confident. And I didn't have the distraction of my practice to keep me from feeling more profoundly how inadequate I felt. Now, I knew that I had felt inadequate all of my life that I could remember, and I didn't understand why. I called it low self-esteem, or I'd call it mild to moderate depression. You know how we go along and we make up these, social anxiety, blah, right. Blah, blah. Yeah. we make up these little things, but never, ever, ever did the word shame come to me until I was sitting in my kitchen one day and I was having coffee. And this is after I'd moved to the coast, after I'd closed my practice, which, by the way, I opened the practice back up again. I just want you to know that I just couldn't live without it. And so I was having a cup of coffee, and this memory from my past came in. That was a memory that I had reviewed many times over. It was not a new memory. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, Lordy, here this comes again. What is this? Why does this keep coming? And so I sort of watched it. You know how your memories kind of play out like a little film in your head. And I watched it, and I watched who said what and who did what and what happened then and da-da-da, same stuff I'd been over. But this time, for some reason, it went deeper. And I saw much more deeply the feelings that young person, I was about maybe 11 or 12 years old in this memory. I saw the feelings of that young me in a way that I'd never seen before. And I watched her behavior on a level I'd never seen before. And all of a sudden, I thought to myself, oh my God, what I'm feeling is shame. And before, I thought I was feeling just aggravation, or I'd call it like not being treated fairly. But I never, honest to God, I never named the name shame. Now, Brene Brown had come out with her books, and she had put shame kind of in the lexicon. But as you know, she's a researcher and a professor. She was not a clinician at the time. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to learn everything I can about this, because I am sick and tired of feeling inadequate at my age with my experience. How come I just can't find a way to help this resolve or to heal? So I started reading everything I could about shame, and the things that I learned, which I would like to share just a little bit in a minute with you, were really important to me. And as I was learning about shame, I also started thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do to help myself move beyond this? How am I going to heal these aspects of myself? And luckily, I had a journal, and I was writing these things down. And I was doing some of the practices that I thought, from my clinical perspective and also from the reading, I thought it would be helpful. And so that is the sort of the journey that eventually ended up being in the book that I wrote that you mentioned. So would this be a good time for me to talk about some of the things that I learned about shame? Okay. Okay. So probably the thing that was the biggest for me, I learned from the wonderful contributor to the trauma literature, Janina Fisher, and Porges. What is his first name? I can't remember his Stephen um, Porges. And the thing that I learned is that shame is a survival mechanism. It's a survival skill. And it's right in there with fight, flight, flee. And then the next one, which some people call fawning, Fawning. I don't like that. I don't think that describes it at all. Janina Fisher, I believe, calls it collapse, submit, appease. That to me is names shame, right? And then I learned, of course, if it's the survival strategy, then what happens is the thinking brain goes offline and we just go into our instinct. And if we do that over and over and over again, because we're feeling threatened, because we're not feeling safe, because we're feeling discounted, because we're feeling mistreated, because we're emotionally neglected, we're feeling alone and without allies. If we keep going through that over and over and over again, then that becomes a very well trodden path in our neural pathway. And here comes a little slight trigger. And the trigger can be something as seemingly insignificant as we're talking and saying something important and someone yawns, and all of a sudden we just flip into the shame position, like I'm boring them, they're not going to want to listen to me, right? And so I learned that I wasn't responsible for the shame that I had. And where before, now this is going to sound kind of odd because like you had mentioned when we were speaking before we started the recording, I didn't ever think of my clients like this, but I thought of myself as the shame that I had and then the feelings of inadequacy I had were a character flaw. It was something just sort of personally wrong with me, which fits right into the shame, right? Fits right into it. And so then I learned, and I kind of had known this, but I learned it in a deeper way, that this strategy of collapsing, of going little, of caving in is how it feels in our guts. We just kind of cave in. Then the chatter that starts in our head, which I call shame speak, but you can call it the imposter syndrome.
Traitor Within.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you.
It's that voice.
Yes. Thank you for putting that in there. Yes. The traitor within. It originally, as you said in the introduction, it served a purpose. It kept us safe. You know, when we needed to please someone, when we needed to stay on somebody's good side. And as you and I both know, sometimes even people who are being severely abused, that abuser is the only real connection they have. And so they will learn, and learning makes it sound more like conscious than it is, because it's very unconscious. They'll learn that they need to do whatever it is that they need to do to stay safe.
Correct.
And so those are some things that I learned about shame that were really, really helpful to me. The origins of shame, how that voice begins, in a sense, like your friend.
Well, that's the whole thing. So the way that I came up with the traitor within is it starts off as your friend.
Oh, yes.
And when it turns into the traitor, it's still a part of you that has good intentions. I don't look at this traitor as this evil force. I look at the traitor as being someone who's still trying to be your friend, but they're misguided.
Yes.
They're taking information or ways of your coping that work that cannot work anymore in these situations. And it doesn't know any other way to do it. It has tunnel vision. So you're being triggered, and your way of handling the trigger is not helping anymore.
Yes.
So you self-sabotaging. So it's self-sabotaging. So I always look at that part of you as a traitor I hope people look at that part with compassion.
Yes.
And and love. It's part of you. But it's not serving you anymore. So it's a need to replace it with some other ways that serve you better.
Yes. It's almost like, and maybe I think you might agree with me, I don't know, but it's stuck in time. It's a sort of a template of survival that is no longer necessary when we come into our adult life, right?
Exactly right.
Exactly. I was talking to this man the other day, and he said to me, we were talking about what he called his inner critic, and he said, I, he said, "Oh, the voice I hear in my head is my future self." And I thought, "Oh, really? Now that's kind of interesting." And so I said to him, "Well, tell me a little bit about what it says." And he started repeating some of the things that it said. And then he paused and he said, "You know, it kind of has a put down quality to it, doesn't it?" And I thought, "Yeah, it does." And he said, "And now that I think about it, it never tells me, oh, you did a good job. It never kind of, stands back and is proud of me." And then he kept talking and he said, "Oh my God." He said, "I don't think it's my future self at all." He said, "I think it's the compilation of my very driven father and all the coaches that I had in my life." And I'm like, there we go.
Yep.
That's the content, right?
Right.
Right. But
That
by
must have
him,
been a wonderful, as a therapist, though, you're watching his head, right? Get it, get it. Isn't it wonderful?
it's wonderful.
Right.
It's wonderful. It's one of those small wins that means
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
everything.
Right.
Because then he could change his relationship
Yeah.
to it, like you talked about. It's an aspect that served a purpose. He did very well in sports. That was a huge part of his identity. But he does not need to have he doesn't need to have that voice sitting there like it's a good commentator on his situation now that he's an adult. Um, and so that was a very powerful conversation. Yes. Um, I'd like to share with you, if that's okay, a few of the strategies that I have come up with in terms of dealing with this traitor within. Would that be okay?
I would love it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Jessica. What can you say, right?
No, I really would love it.
Okay, good, good. Well, one of the things, and this was from my own investigation about my traitor, as well as listening to other people, of course, over the course of many years. And one of the things that I noticed is that I would repeat what my traitor was saying to me. So if I made a mistake, I would say something like, "Oh God, how can you be so stupid?" Or things like, "You'd think you would have learned the last time around that just wasn't going to work out." Or, "Why did you take that risk? Look at how," I mean, it would just, and so I would say it out loud.
I want to give you a hug.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And, I know from some hypnosis training that I had that what you say to yourself is as powerful as what somebody outside of you says to yourself, right? And so once I got that connection, I vowed to myself, okay, I am not going to say this. I am not going to be, I called it working for shame. I am not going to be doing that. I'm not going to be repeating these things. And I started suggesting to my clients that if they noticed that they were doing that, and I encouraged them to be vigilant about it, because part of being vigilant is that I think is necessary. I think you would agree, is because it is, that voice has been with us since we can remember. And so it just seems like it's our conscience. It's our best advisor. Like we were saying, it's our friend. Well, it isn't. And we certainly don't need to be repeating it. And so that was one of the things that I learned, that once I stopped repeating it and I started catching it and I started seeing how it no longer served me, then that helped me step into creating sort of an inner dialogue that was much healthier.
Yes.
And much more up to speed with where I was in my life. Another thing that I learned was that people who are raised in a shaming environment have a very skewed picture of who they are. They don't really know who they are. And as you and I are aware, Jessica, and I'm sure the majority of your listeners, we learn who we are by who our parents or who our caretakers or who our guardians say we are. And, if, let's just say that in my situation, for example, my mother had me at a time in her life when she did not want to be pregnant. And so she did not welcome me into the world, and I was not a part of her life that she valued. And so I got the messages primarily by her emotional neglect I got the messages of who I was, and it was not a very healthy picture, right? But what I learned is that all throughout our lives, we have an opportunity to change that image of ourselves. And it often comes through people complimenting us or reflecting things back to us. And one of the things I noticed is that when people would compliment me, I would kind of shrug my shoulder, not take it seriously, just think, oh, that was nice, and just move on. So I've learned and have talked about and emphasized, when someone gives you a compliment, treat it like it's, a pot of gold, because it helps you then sort of reform this image that you have of yourself. It's gold.
You have to let it in, though, as
you have to let it in, right? You have to pause. And I've watched people do this. They pause and then they say, thank you. And I had some workmen here, and I would compliment them on the work that they were doing. And they would pause and say, thank you. And there wasn't any like, oh, well, I've been doing this since I was 10. It's no big deal. None of that stuff. They were taking it in. And so we have this traitor within, and we need to have some ways of creating our own inner dialogue, our own inner feelings about ourselves that are apart from that, I would say.
Replace the verbiage, to replace the voice.
Yes.
When we're triggered.
Yes, when we're triggered. And, speaking of triggered, because that's such that happens to us on so many levels, right? It's somatic, it's cognitive, it's emotional, it's old patterns. And one of the things that I have always liked to do is I like to watch how people who don't get triggered, how they handle things. And there's a lot said about developing self-compassion. And I think that you and I might agree, and that is that when we are raised in an environment that is unsupportive or feels unsafe, like you mentioned, or for me, emotionally neglectful, that was my trauma, emotional neglect, which some people say is as bad as physical abuse. Who's here to argue what's the worst? Let's just say it affects you, right? So it is our job to create these shock absorbers, and because we're going to have these times in life that are hard for us. And so being able to develop self-compassion. Now, and we don't just get an insight, oh, I need more self-compassion, and here it comes. We have to work at it. We have to prioritize it. We have to learn the languaging, the self-soothing languaging. With some of my clients, they would have something really hard happen to them, and I would say, wow, what did you say to yourself about that? And they would not have a self-soothing inner dialogue available to them.
Right. Well, they didn't have parents that taught them.
That's right. That's right. And, you think about the parents who teach them, that's years and years and years of parents teaching that to you.
Right.
That is really deeply ingrained. You have ready access to that language, going, oh, it's all going to work out. Everything's going to be fine. I'm here for you. Remember the last time it worked out,
So much of us is automatic.
Yes.
So if you don't, so to undo, it takes time.
Yes. Undo and replace. Right? Would you say that part? Yes.
Yeah. Undo and replace.
Yes. So I personally worked on finding self-soothing languaging for myself. I watched my friends. I even would listen to different television programs that had some good examples of that. And I would take it in because I needed it. I did not have it. I have all this self-scathing stuff, the traitor within languaging. I did not have the other things. And so I think the point I'm making is that I'm reinforcing it with myself, but I'm also sort of emphasizing it with your listeners and watchers. And that is, these are things you have to work at. And you can't just show up to your therapy session and have your therapist say it to you and think that you're going to be able to access it as readily as you want to or need to.
Mm-hmm.
particularly when you think about the fact that other people who don't struggle with these kinds of things to the same degree had many, 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 like maybe 17, 18 years of
Mm-hmm.
listening to all this positive talk
Mm-hmm.
from their parents.
Mm-hmm. It is work.
Yes, it's work.
I mean, I wear a bracelet. It's a Traitor Within bracelet. And I have a whole bunch of rubber ones. I can send you a bunch. And it's just a reminder that if I feel like I'm being triggered or if I feel like I'm going to go into that negative voice or
Uh-huh.
whatever it is, that
Yes.
it's pause, whatever I've decided to replace it with.
Yes.
And it's just a reminder because sometimes things are so automatic
Uh-huh.
that
I
we,
love that. I love that.
Mhm.
Do you find yourself kind of touching it
I
as a
touch
way?
it. That's usually
Yeah.
sometimes I touch it, or I have rubber ones that I give away to anyone that wants it,
Uh-huh.
and I could send you a bunch. But
Okay.
just the feeling, I don't have to look at it. I could just feel it,
Uh-huh.
just enough
Uh-huh.
to. I mean, I don't do it as much as I had done it, but I encourage people to do it that
Yes.
way, and it's just a
Yes.
reminder. I have a person I'm working with now who needs, she'll write something on a post-it, and
Yes.
in words, I've had to replace the negative talk and
Yes.
she'll write the positive down and she'll look at
Yes.
it and it
Yes.
works.
Yes, it
It takes
works.
time, but it works.
It
And
works.
important to note, I think you would say this, but tell me if you don't, that you can have a couple steps back. It doesn't mean you're not going to go 3 steps forward.
Oh, goodness gracious. I mean, even now, there are times when I realize that, oh my goodness, I have fallen into that.
Hmm.
And then I have this, you don't need to listen to it, Kristine. It's old stuff.
Hmm.
And then I managed to kind of like get conscious again. Because when you fall into it, you almost like you go unconscious in a way. So
Hmm.
I have this way, like you do with your bracelet, of bringing
Hmm.
myself back into current time, current
Hmm.
reality. And I have some tools for which
Hmm.
I'm very, very grateful.
Hmm.
Um, and would you I'd be interested in knowing about this for you, Jessica. Do you find that you hear the traitor within less often since you've been
Uh,
working on it?
well, several pieces to it. My Traitor Within showed up in my romantic relationships. So I'm not
Isn't
being triggered now. I'm in actually for the first time in a very long time in a healthy relationship. But for many,
praise heaven.
for a lot of years, from 15 to 50, I was not.
Yeah.
And so in fairness, I have not been triggered. So I'm assuming I'm okay because I've done a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work,
Mm-hmm.
but I've not been, in fairness, I have not been tested recently.
Uh-huh. Well, I hope it continues that way for
Mhm.
you.
I do
Uh-huh.
too. But I
Uh-huh.
think that it's a constant work. I don't think you can get rid of your traitor
Mm-hmm.
100%. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that these skills are very important.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's very possible I could be triggered again.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have tools. I mean, one of the tools is naming it.
Yes.
That's the traitor within. I think that's acknowledging it, naming it, learning about it.
Yes.
And then people come up with different tools, as you said, that work. And the first step would be if you're being triggered, you can do grounding action, anything to bring you back to a little more cognitive
Mm-hmm.
space. And then the tools that you just shared. And if you'd like to share more, I'd love it,
Mm-hmm.
of what people do to
Mm-hmm.
continually work, because it takes work. And I think
Right.
that there's always a chance so in a general sense, there's always a chance that people will be triggered again.
Yes. You know, I think it almost always, I think, shows up in people's intimate relationships because
100%.
that was where it started, right?
Mhm.
In your
Yes.
most intimate primary first relationships is where it all got
Mhm.
started. And so of course it's going to show up there, which is
Right.
really just such a pain, isn't it? But it gets our attention,
Hmm.
and you didn't give up, right? You stayed seeking out a healthy primary relationship.
Yes, I was a big believer in love, so I
Yes.
kept going after choosing many people who were not um,
Mm-hmm.
a safe place for me.
Yes.
But
Yes.
my Trader Within was because I also believe it's messaging and modeling is part of my definition of the Trader Within, the messaging and modeling that you learn as a child. So
Yes.
so as I said, what was going on in my life, which I mentioned earlier, I also watched my mother deal with my father's infidelity, which was to look the other way. I
Uh,
watched, I watched the matriarchs, that my grandmother, my aunt, my mother, tell me that when someone cheated on me or hurt me emotionally or physically or whatever, to look the other way.
Oh my
That
goodness.
you as a female is the fixer. That if anything
Mm-hmm.
is going, your job is to make that other person your partner happy, and you are the to fix it, and you are to, big statement always was, carry on, carry on, carry
Oh,
on. And we
wow.
are to, my mother was a very she was a judge. She was a appellate court judge in New Jersey. She was a
Wow.
feminist. I mean, she was fantastic in the outside world.
Wow.
But when it came to my father,
Uh-huh.
and he was, and whatever he did, it was okay.
Right. She followed
So,
that old
and
messaging.
it doesn't matter. And you literally go pick up, brush yourself off, and you carry on no matter what happens. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't share it to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so messaging and modeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that I had great relationships with friends, great relationships at work. It didn't show up anywhere else,
Yes.
nowhere else. But I was left with the fear of abandonment. That was
Yes.
so everything. So as long as wasn't, as long as I didn't dissolve that relationship,
Yes.
then my trader total complete goal and tunnel vision was not to have me feel abandoned.
Yes.
But as my title of my book is, um, I what my fear of abandonment led me to abandon myself.
Yes.
So that was my traitor.
Yes.
And it showed up in romantic relationships. It did not,
Yes.
I never feared abandonment with anyone else. And part of it was the relationship, because I was dealing with people who started off very strong and and it seemed very healthy. And then
Yes.
it changed.
Yes.
And so my trader didn't have to kick in for the first year. It kicked
Yes.
in for the next 9, whatever it was,
Yes.
in each
Mm.
relationship, because I was married more
Yes.
than once.
Yes.
But
Isn't
intimate relationships, yes, that's where it usually shows up.
Yes. Well, that's also really good advice to people about dating and being in relationship with someone for a while,
Mhm.
isn't it? Because
Mhm.
your stuff doesn't show up and their stuff doesn't show up,
Mhm.
and then until it does,
Mhm.
right? And then
Mhm.
all of the old patterns coming in.
Mhm.
I had been in I've been in a primary relationship now for, I think it's going to be 40 years in the next few years or whatever.
Mhm.
And uh, and even when I was 20 years into that relationship and there was absolutely no reason for me to have any fear about abandonment, I would
Mhm.
still wake up at night just terrified,
Mhm.
having dreamt that my partner had left me.
Mhm.
And it's like,
Mhm.
oh my goodness. I mean, these things just
Mhm.
can hang on for
That's
quite a
right.
while,
Mhm.
right? Quite a while.
Mhm.
My trader will show up in very small ways right now when I'm getting ready to take a risk about something.
Mm.
And it'll just start kind of, I don't want to say humming in the background because it's not humming, but there's just like, it's not real loud and it doesn't cause my stomach to fall out. And I don't go into this energy collapse as much as I used to.
Mhm.
But it can be back there going, you better be careful. I don't know. I don't know if you're up to this
Mhm.
or whatever. And I just go, okay, there you are. I don't need to listen to you.
Yeah, good.
And uh, you served your purpose,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it doesn't distress me that it's there, where before I
Mhm.
was very
Mhm.
distressed and embarrassed and tried to hide that.
Mhm. Which is a
Yes,
shame.
yes,
Mhm.
yes, exactly, exactly.
Mhm. But it's that, but that piece I love, because it's what I teach people too, is that, like, it's not for you to hate that part of you.
No,
It's, it's part of you, you
yes,
know. It's just, it's not the full picture. It's just a
yes,
piece. It's hopefully mostly of your past,
yes,
but it is part of you. So
yes,
knowledge gives it less strength too, when you
yes.
acknowledge it.
Yes.
And
It's
then,
like Richard Schwartz, the guy who's the IFS, Internal Family Systems.
yeah.
He wrote the book No Bad Parts.
Exactly.
And that's exactly it. They all
Right.
served a purpose. They were all there
Mhm.
for us.
Mhm.
And you know, that reminds me when you said something about that you didn't identify as having trauma with a big T.
Yeah.
One of the things that I discovered as I began to explore my own history more was that in my family, in my growing up life, I had an obvious, well, let's just say, an obvious jerk. It was my stepfather.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I would focus on what it was about my life that I felt so unhappy about, or what I didn't like, or what was challenging, or whatever, I always focused on my stepfather. But
Mm-hmm.
when I started going a little bit deeper into my history and a little bit deeper into my feelings, because I started treating myself like I was my own client and really
Mm-hmm.
investigating more deeply, I began to see that the primary person who had hurt me was my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And whoa, I felt this big wash of betray, feelings like I was betraying her, and how could I do that? And she,
Mm-hmm.
I saw all the layers
I
of
get
ways
it.
that I had protected her.
Yeah.
And so then I had to just decide, okay, I'll tell the truth to myself. I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to tell it to anybody else, although I must say I share some of this in the writing that I did.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to tell it to myself in order to really get to the root of
Mm-hmm.
why I was so susceptible to
Mm-hmm.
being shamed. And it had to do with the original wounding being the mother wounding, the wound that I had from my mom. And then working through how I was going to feel about that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to just say something about
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness. Can we say something about forgiveness
Of
here?
course.
Okay.
Of course.
So, forgiveness is a word that, I don't know, we kind of need a new word, I think, because that word has just got so much baggage and stuff hanging on to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when I did a bunch of research on forgiveness, and I
Mm-hmm.
ran across this particular man who's a psychologist, and he had done a lot of studies on the psychological effects of forgiveness. And
Mm-hmm.
so he has all these studies, including this group of women who were incest survivors,
Mm-hmm.
and the process that he eventually sort of put together as his process of forgiveness. And one of the first things is to identify what it is that you're forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see, if you had asked me, oh, your mom, did this and this, do you forgive her? I didn't even know the depths of what I had felt. And I go, oh, yeah, she did the best she could. She had, 5 little kids. She couldn't, I just like go
Mm-hmm.
through my little story, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when
Mm-hmm.
I started really wanting to heal this deep wound, I had to tell myself the truth about what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so, uh, one of the first processes is telling yourself the truth about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you've done in your life, because I could hear you sort of intimating this, you start looking at who they were,
Mm-hmm.
who your offender was.
Mm-hmm.
In your case, the modeling of your mom. In my case, the situation of my mom
Mm-hmm.
being so young, and you just start humanizing them,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get to make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And the choice is, what do you want to do with these feelings that
Mm-hmm.
you have?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and you're nodding your head, all the insight in the world you can have about what happened and who they were and blah, blah, blah. I think you have to actively, this is true for me anyway, you
Mm-hmm.
have to actively make a choice. I am not going to carry this story
Yeah,
on.
of course.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what's driven me a lot is my children. So
Aha.
I
Tell
am
me.
not carrying this on because I don't want my kids to. So that really shook me. And when I realized about intergenerational trauma, and I realized that I was doing the exact same thing my mother did with my father, I was doing with my
Mm-hmm.
men, and I was
Mm-hmm.
modeling it in front of my kids.
Oh my Lord.
And so
You couldn't help yourself really until it became
no.
conscious,
And
right?
like, yeah, exactly. And that didn't
Uh-huh.
happen until I was 50 something, leaving my third marriage and took
Uh-huh.
the time not to date because I would date the next day. I mean, not the next day, but I didn't take any time to
Right.
do any work. I was a
Uh-huh.
therapist. My friends were therapists. There was no reason to do any work. And I kept making the same mistake over and over and over again.
Oh, bless
And
you.
so I was moving to California, but I wasn't moving for another 2.5 years. So I'm like, I'll date maybe, but I'm not doing anything serious. And I did the work
Uh-huh.
because I looked at my kids and I'm like, I am not giving you this.
Uh-huh.
And I did a lot of bad modeling.
Uh-huh.
Now I hope I'm doing a lot of good modeling, and I'm speaking to them, and this book will come out, and I wrote them a letter, which they haven't gotten yet, but they will get, which talks about this.
Uh-huh.
But that was my mate. That was a driving force for
Good
a
for
lot of what I'm
you.
doing, and for other people. You do have, as a grown up, you do have the ability to make not only a change for yourself, but the change for future generations.
Yes, yes, yes. And that's how we stop these patterns,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, good for you. How
Exactly.
old are your children?
Well, 37,
Uh-huh.
uh, about to be 30, and 26, and soon to be 27.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, they have a lot of good modeling and good wisdom coming from you now, don't they?
To me, from meeting them now, but they're
Yes.
3 without relationships, and I
Uh-huh.
worry.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it doesn't mean they're not working on themselves, right? I
No, they're
mean,
good people. They're
yeah,
fantastic human souls,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to undo the damage.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, as you know, it's an inside job, right? They've got to undo it themselves. They've got to be willing. And I think that's the other thing is that there isn't anybody who's going to do this work for us.
Hmm.
And, if your mother came to you today or if she came to you 20 years ago and apologized and was articulate about her apology and you knew she was sincere, you would still have the work to do.
Right.
And
That's
so,
true.
it's like we have to dig in and do
Hmm.
and care enough about ourselves to do the work and
Hmm.
feel like we're worthy enough to do the work.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
here's the other thing, and I bet you encounter this all the time too, and that is, shame basically is a message that you're just unworthy. You're unworthy of being loved. You're unworthy of being seen.
Exactly. Well, one of the messages that was told to me also as a young, when I was told I was adopted and I was almost 10, I was told
Ah,
I could be sent back.
oh Lordy,
Yeah, there's a few little good messaging and modeling that occurred.
you were told that at 10 or before 10?
I was never told at 9, 2 months shy of 10, I was first told I was adopted. The
Wow,
conversation lasted no more than 10 minutes and then never spoken
wow,
of again until I brought it up years later. And in that
wow.
conversation, and I think she was trying to say, we could have sent you back, but we didn't. But
Uh-huh.
as a child, and a child that who never has a parent that didn't discuss again, I didn't
Right.
have time, they didn't soothe me. They just literally got up and walked away.
Wow.
So, and a bunch of other stuff that was happened as well. You feel, you know, unworthy. You feel,
Yes.
that you're,
Yes.
and I've been told too sensitive to this, like the messaging. There was a lot of messaging.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. I love that. You know, I could say something about the messaging that you got, but I want to just say something about being too sensitive because that's
mhm.
something that, and I love the idea that the real message is you're too sensitive for me because I'm not very sensitive.
No, but
you
that's
know,
true. And
it
that's
is.
the half that I understand. And I certainly
Mm-hmm.
understand as a therapist. But I heard that as a child. And then the men that I picked said the same thing if I ever
Oh,
brought
Lordy.
anything up. And I
Uh-huh.
really, looking back, and I didn't bring up 90% of what was going on, but they maybe, so that message is not uncommon. I'm sure you've had many patients, or many clients rather, who talk about feeling
Oh,
was told they were
yes.
too sensitive.
Oh, yes. Oh,
And
yes. Too needy,
too needy, too
too
sensitive.
sensitive,
Mhm.
too big for your britches. Who do you think you are? All of these things that are
Mhm.
diminishing. And,
Mhm.
and uh, also, I'm sure that you experience this as well. You might ask a client, or I even might ask myself, about my dreams or my what I want for my life or how I envision my future.
Mhm.
And when you're sort of just surviving, and listening to you, Jessica, I have a deepening respect for your situation because you had an extremely undermining life that you lived. I kind of prefer mine, actually. Mine was more neglectful.
Mhm.
Yours was more antagonistic, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
Um, but, if you're busy surviving, you're
Mhm.
not asking yourself, what do I prefer and
Absolutely.
what dreams do I have? And so that's another thing, I think. And then women are, I think, culturally trained, and you spoke to this beautifully, to
Mhm.
be paying attention to what everybody else needs and everybody else wants, and then we step in and try and make it happen for them, right?
Well, and the part of it too, and I also liked who I was, meaning I liked that I took care of people. I mean, I like
Yes.
that part of me. It's
Yes.
I wanted to be a social worker since I was in eighth grade.
Oh,
This is
wow.
what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I didn't, and everywhere else, as I said, I achieved exactly what I wanted. I went to college and then it's straight, graduated into it 3.5 years. I went to grad school.
Yeah.
That right after I became a social worker, I wanted to be a mom more than everything, so I still, in other areas,
Yeah.
felt very fulfilled and very, but yet
Mm-hmm.
it played out in a very painful way, and and you become very focused. So yes, there was no time to really think about, you
Mm-hmm.
know, what
Mm-hmm.
was going on or doing the work. I didn't do the work
Right.
until I was 50 something years old, and I was a
Right.
psychotherapist, which I think is important, I think, for both of us and other therapists to, at least I can speak for myself. I don't want to speak for you, but I can say that even when you're trained, you don't necessarily see things clearly for yourself. And
No.
which I hope really alleviates shame for
Yes.
others who aren't trained, and
Yes.
other professionals, because even people who are trained don't necessarily see things so clearly in the beginning. You
No,
have to
they
do the
don't.
work too, just like everybody else.
Yes, absolutely. In my training, if anything, helped me uh, find fault with myself with more sophisticated words.
Yeah. Well, we
You
should know
know.
better, right? We should, yeah, with more sophisticated words. I do. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The same.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And,
Hmm.
and you know, I think the other thing too is that therapists, at least this is true for me, I just lost myself in my work.
Hmm.
And so it took some very big knocks on the head to get me to do the work. And I'm grateful that I didn't just decide, well, I feel 89% okay, I'm just going to ignore the other part.
Hmm.
And that I just really wanted to be able to inhabit my life, inhabit my body, inhabit my relationships in a way in which I didn't have that kind of swirly, whirly feeling in the middle of my stomach, and I
Hmm.
wasn't sort of like a little on edge. And I just, it was like, okay, well, I'm taking care of this because I never said I deserve it. I just think I said something like, I'm sick and tired of feeling the way I do. And so I'm going
Okay.
to do something about it.
Hmm.
And that's the other thing, too. I think your messaging and my messaging is you can do something about it.
Hmm.
And, my parents, who are older than your parents, probably, they grew up in the non psychological age.
Oh, for sure.
And they did not have the tools and
Hmm.
resources. They
Hmm.
didn't have the therapists available in the same way. They didn't even have you know
My parents didn't believe in therapy. They didn't like what I did. I mean, actually,
yes,
it was a negative that I became a therapist.
yes,
Uh,
me too, they didn't understand it.
hmm.
Why would you want to listen to people's problems all day?
Hmm.
It's like, well.
Or for me, it was, you don't do any good. What you do isn't going to help people. Like what
Wow.
you're doing, it's actually, yeah.
Wow, you really are a survivor, Jessica, let me tell you.
It was, yeah.
Woo.
I'm having
uh,
trouble, but yes.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
meaning taking that as that yes.
Yes, okay, take it. Yeah.
Well, no, I just
Yes,
mean,
you
again,
are.
I don't feel like it's such, people had it much worse than I did.
Of course.
That's what I meant.
I know. People
But
are always going to have it worse. People are always going to have more money. People are always going to something,
right.
right? But that, as
Yeah.
you said, we stop, we pause, like you said, we
Yeah.
take it in.
Hmm.
Yes, yes. And, I also think that maybe one of the reasons that we're not so, like, yes, that's true about me is because we also realize that there is a convergence of circumstances and people who come
Hmm.
into our lives and teachers and mentors and people who
Hmm.
model and all of that. We just didn't do it on our own steam
Hmm.
entirely, but
Hmm.
we had to do it. We had to pay attention and do our own work.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I'm
mhm.
proud of of the field that we're in. I'm
Yes,
very proud of it. So
yes,
even with all their messaging, even with what they said, I would never have done anything, that stuff, differently. There's,
yes. I agree. I agree. It's extremely satisfying. It's
hmm.
extremely satisfying. I had the opportunity of seeing this past weekend a former client of mine that I saw probably kind of towards the beginning of my career, which we were just figuring things out then, and
Mm-hmm.
but I know what a mess her life was, and I know kind of the story about her history and also about her choices.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so proud of who she is now, and I am
Mm-hmm.
so happy with how she's been able to work with herself and come out on the other side, and how she manages these little shame whispers that she has, and that's about as loud as they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And to know that I was a part of that, it's very gratifying. It's very
Mm-hmm.
gratifying. Yep. Yep.
No, I agree when that
Mm-hmm.
happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And let's just say there's lots of people doing what we do in different ways, right? There's
Mhm.
teachers, there's moms,
Oh, yeah. All playing
there's,
a part.
yes, we are.
Yeah.
Thank
And they make
heaven.
a difference. You hear stories about very dysfunctional childhood, but then there's that one teacher, that second
Yes.
grade teacher or whatever it is that, you know,
Yes.
that helped that changed their life in a very positive
Yes.
way.
Yes. Yes.
Everyone
Lots
makes a
of,
difference.
yes, lots of good people in our world, and lots of good help in our world.
Hmm.
Yep, I agree.
And we are all worthy of taking that help.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And claiming our worth. You think about, I think about little children when they first come in, and you had three children. I have one adopted son, and so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know him when he was a little person.
Hmm.
But you've had the experience of little people, and they're just so happy and full of themselves and confident and
Hmm.
expressive and all of that, right? Which is
Hmm.
how it should be. And
Hmm.
I mean, should be. I don't want to say it like that. It's like it's how it can be,
Hmm.
right? And then stuff starts happening, and it gets whittled
Right.
away and whittled away. But we can
Hmm.
go back and find a lot of that,
Hmm.
which is also, I think, the messaging of how we can learn to deal with the traitor within and find a life where that part of us does not run our lives. It doesn't inform what we do and how we feel about ourselves.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you wanted to add anything or leave our listeners and viewers with anything more, what would it be?
Well, you've spoken about that you were 50 something before some things came together for you.
Yeah.
And I could share that when I was doing some of the work that I was talking to you about in terms of investigating my life, I was in my 60s.
Hmm.
And so my message is never give up, right?
Hmm.
It is our right to feel good about ourselves, and it's
Hmm.
possible. And
Hmm.
there's so many resources and so many good people that can be
Hmm.
helpful.
Hmm.
And so my message is that we all deserve to have a life in which we can contribute,
Hmm.
because the less we're pulled down by shame, the less disempowered we are, the
Hmm.
more we have to give to other people, and the more energy we have, because we're
Hmm.
not pulling this big old bag of rocks along with us.
Hmm.
And so that's
Hmm.
my message: never give up, never
Love
give
it.
up.
I love
Mm.
it. Thank you for everything. I am so happy and honored to have met you.
Thank you, Jessica. It's been a lot of fun. I'm happy to learn about you and to know that you just live not
I
that
know.
far.
My house
Uh-huh.
is your house.
Thank you.
Really?
That's so sweet.
Stay
That's so
on.
sweet.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
But goodbye. Bye,
Okay.
everybody.